right, hello everyone, and welcome to week 11 in CIT 93. I just finished, as I'd sent a message out. I was running a little behind on grading some of the work that you had turned in while I was gone, and so I just finished grading the challenges and then the code up for this item here, these pages here and here. And so as of tonight, I haven't seen the work yet you will have done, but seems like many of you have actually given this some thought, and it seems like the answers are provoking some continuing research, which I would definitely say is beneficial. Okay, so what I want to do today is I'm going to add something into JavaScript, the word parts, and it's again a part two. Okay, so of course part one is, continuing the JavaScript, the word parts from, and I say here from 38 because we ended at 37, so 38, which is arrays, and you just had some free code camp about method arrays built in. Arguments, we haven't really talked about spreads, so that's a nice inclusion there. Function overloading, we have had at least a discussion, or at least a look at it a little bit. Not much. Syntax parsers, this is just a continuation of the what you've already had in JavaScript, the weird parts. And then automatic semicolon insertion is really good to understand, because sometimes leaving off that semicolon can really cause problems. White space. Ifs, of course, this is something that hopefully by now you're definitely getting more and more comfortable with understanding how we're in this part of our class using ifs as the way to implement modules because of ES5, and you will learn a different method in ES6 when we get there, hopefully, if you're continuing with 94. And then talks about safe code, so this is a continuation. You're going to go sorry, so you stop right there, so at 45. So, and then we'll continue the rest of these items next week. So again, these are great things to understand, and it seems like most of you have gotten the idea of some notes and code in this, so I don't think I need to add anything to this, except to say make sure you do add this new file into your index, your root index, so that when I run your site, your root from your root folder, I'll see that work. Okay. Okay, so this is actually no longer new, but I should take that off. So in part two, I've been again reflecting on what you all have done for the coffee run, and moving towards our, and worth noting here where we're at, because we're quickly moving. So if we look at this, right, so I'm recording now content for week 11, 12, 13. So in week 14 we start our last series of Develop It. And I had asked you all last week, okay, and this is in week 10, in the challenges, to think about, if you would want to continue what you had started with Develop 1 and 2 in order when we do our next round, right? So our next items are our next taking it and developing from what we've learned. And some of you said, yeah. Some of you weren't sure it would work, and I can see that with some of your projects. So this is really a good thing at this point, because I'm actually going to allow you to make a decision whichever way you want to go, but you're going to have to make a decision soon about which direction you're going to move. Okay, as far as when we get into the develop part of our class in middle November to the end. Okay. So now is the time to make a decision which direction you're going to go. And for me, and I will just show you what and I know we're on week 11 and we're still on after, the part 2 of this, but I want to show you when I taught this class last year in the face-to-face mode, I created this program, and this program was futuristic futuristic program based on, you know, how much of a footprint you have. Carbon footprint is really what we're talking about. And again, this is a futuristic concept. I just had the bare minimum in the app working. But more than anything, what I want to show you is an important part that we're going to add this week, which is login. Okay, so most everything I saw, most all development projects have some kind of user login. Because you want to be able to A, have that user login, and B, then capture unique data for that user. So, and I'm just going to move over real quick to show you, and now I'm on the Firebase console. Okay, so I had a couple of projects that I did, and I think this is the second one that I can show you. But let me just go back to that Earthprint one. So for that one, I implemented authentication, and you're going to actually do this based on a video this week. And so here's just the user accounts that I created. And then there's something called a unique ID that gets created for every user. And then through the code, I then implemented user-specific data to match up. It seems like it's taken this. I noticed I was in here earlier a few minutes to come in. Oh yeah, here it is. So then what I did is I captured through code, right? So I then, once the user logged in, I could grab their unique identifier. Now again, this is beyond what you're going to learn. I'm just kind of giving you a preview because I want you to start thinking about your own development here. But most all the things I saw you develop, and again I'm reiterating, but the most development has to have a user that they can then capture that unique data for, because without that, most apps really aren't functional, right? Think about every app you use. How many of them have unique data on you? And the answer is probably all of them, right? So in this case, through code, I was able to capture that unique identifier, right? And then capture some fairly basic email, first name and last name, and then present that back to the user. Okay, now that was last year. So this summer, as I was looking at taking the idea of the coffee run to a new level, and I'm just going to log out real quick, what I decided to do was say order while in line. And what this really forced me to do was understand, right? So again, what we're doing right now is you're creating coffee run to be something that the person in the truck would be taking orders in. And I thought flipping that around a little bit so that the person standing in line could order. This is actually something I was reading about becoming more and more common depending on, you know, how you implement it, which is to order while you're in line or while you're going to get in line, right? Get your caffeine fast. But again, we have to have the ability to capture that unique data. So what I did, and I just created, well, I think this is right, testing, see if I got it right. Actually here it comes, right? So that now there's some unique data being captured for that customer, right? So, and some of the things I still wanted to do here was, you know, like do the default order, the one that is most logically ordered. And again, this is stuff we're coming to. You're not there yet. We're coming to this, but I want you to start thinking about this, okay? So how did I do this? So what I did, once the user logged in, again, a similar concept. So now let me show you my project here, right? So authentication, I think I only had 2 accounts. And then inside the database, this was more elaborate than the one I had done before. So here's that unique user ID. So then what I had to do here was I had to capture open orders and previous orders. In order to then, you know, and there's the order itself, right? I definitely gave this a lot of thinking about how I was going to structure this, right? But I want you to start at least thinking about this, not that this is what you have to do, but this is a component that most of you, at least with the authentication, are going to want to integrate into your development. And actually, I'm pretty, unless somebody has something want to come to me, I'm thinking that all your projects should include a login. Okay? So why am I talking about that? Because what I'm going to have you do this week, as again a moving closer to our development projects for the end of this class, is that I'm going to have you watch what students last semester did, which was really just the beginnings to create the structure for a login system. Now they use one form to do this, and so what you will do is after you finish your JavaScript the weird parts, go through watch this video, and then as I had you do this, I want you to place it into the playground area. And I don't think we have an index file in there yet, so that should be fine. But I want you to walk through this because I want you to start thinking about how you would integrate this. Okay, so Firebase is wonderful. Firebase is fairly easy to use. In addition to authentication and database, it also does hosting, because obviously without the ability to host, this would be really hard, right? This would be almost impossible. Well, you couldn't do it actually. So an important part of doing development is being able to host your site out on the web. And Firebase is awesome because it gives you free starting hosting. As sites grow larger, then there would need to pay, but for most beginning sites it's free. And the other thing is it comes with HTTPS automatically built in, and hopefully you've had some exposure to know why that's important. HTTPS, the secured HTTP conversation between the server and the client. Okay, so what I want you to do here is, in addition to doing this, I want you to then in your notes, my notes.md, which by the way, make sure when you're in your notes.md, let me move over, I don't think I have that. This is actually the code from when I did my order in line, right? So we'll talk about that as people want to know about it. What was I talking about here? Oh yeah, so in your notes, make sure you're actually looking at the output, because many of you are not using the correct markdown syntax. And so what it should read like is right, so you would have your headings, and then and you can see just by indenting these, this creates subheadings. So like as an example, on the questions and answers, I should probably see one, being a question, and then a sub being the answers. Okay, so just to say that. So the last thing is on attendance. In week 11, which we'll be moving into, I'm going to ask Jeff if he'd be willing to share some of his answers, because the question came up twice now about wanting to see what the answers to the code up questions were. And so I think Jeff did the best job, and I'm going to actually reach out to Jeff before you hear this, Jeff, to ask you if you wouldn't mind sharing. And actually we could all share, but I think it'd be nice to focus on probably the best example of answering those questions, because you're going to see me, because now that I've finished this, I'm going to start working on the next part of the code up, which now we're going to be moving into updating the DOM, right? So this is a really important concept, right? So anyway, here's what I'm going to leave you with today. When you're thinking about, right, our next series of develop, right, 3, 4, 5, and 6, so 4 weeks of doing development, and if you're considering taking your project, matter of fact, let me just do this real quick. This is summer, so I'm actually going to bring up my 93. Was it summer I did this too? I think it was summer. Apply, develop, okay, match. And then I redid my code. Yeah, so let me do this real quick. So here's the thing, right? So when you're taking what you developed in the first round and you're considering moving it to the last round of develop based on what we've learned. Because here's the thing, whatever you develop now has to be transformed into this module concept. One good area to start looking at this is your functions. This is why when I had you do this work, I went over how I did it because I wanted you to see, and some of you got this and some of you didn't, and that's why I'm bringing it up, is that a candidate for a module could be your function depending on the scope that you've created that. Now I'm just saying a candidate, meaning you would consider that. You would look at your functions and you would think, oh yeah, does that make sense to be a module? Because it may or may not. Some of this probably would go in the idea of a main function, right, that does some of this work. But some of this work definitely could be pulled out into a module. So what I'm considering doing because like I said, over the summer I did the idea of the, order in line concept. But I'm actually thinking of taking my kitty cat match, creating a front end login, capturing game data scores as a way to implement what I had done with Develop 1 and 2 to take it into module. So that would be a good challenge for me. That would be a fun thing to see how that would work. And some of your comments were that, well, I didn't really have anything that would require what we're doing in the coffee run. And the answer is, if it doesn't, then you need to think about how you would include that. And again, this is kind of the going back to the idea of a login, right? So you would think about, capturing user data in a module concept, right? Instead of or in the data store idea, right, you would have captured some kind of creating those users, right, in that module. So I just want you to start thinking about, not grappling with, but thinking about, where we're heading. And what I really want to see is what, do you feel, at this point, I'm going to actually have you make a final decision on this next week. Okay, so in week 12, when we get to our code up, right, you're gonna make a decision on where you're gonna take, what you're gonna use for the development part of this, and you need to commit, because at this point I'm actually gonna have you, because we've been kind of playing around. The idea is we've been taking some of these concepts and just saying create a module, and it doesn't actually have to be a module that you're gonna end up using. More than anything, I wanted to see if you got the concepts. Right? That's what I was really going for, because I had considered doing a leaderboard, and I was like, okay, yeah, leaderboard would be something I could do to add possibly now or in the future, right? But now that I'm actually considering taking my kitty cat match into this module object method, environment or pattern, now I have to really think about this, right? And adding on top of that a login makes sense. I know that's a lot, but I just want you to think about this stuff. And then what I want you to do here, finally, on your notes, just give me, right? So in this case, I want you to give me some feedback. So this is, right? So this is week 10 or week 11. And this is Monday. This is JavaScript, the weird parts. But I want you to give me, right, like your thoughts on what I've covered in this video. It's too hard to type and record, okay? So do you understand what I'm trying to say, which is I want you to make a commitment next week. I want you to understand that adding a user a user login makes sense for most of your sites. I want you to think about, if you believe, and some of you already said this, but right, the idea of how you would modify what you've started with to put it into this concept of modules, objects, and methods, right, this coding style, or anything else, because I've talked about quite a bit here. All right, that's it. I'll talk to you later.